Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies. Today we are honored to have Dr. Manuel Pastor. Manuel Pastor is a distinguished professor of sociology and American studies and ethnicity at the University of Southern California. He currently directs the Equity Research Institute at USC. Pastor holds an economics PhD from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and is the inaugural holder of the Trumpism Chair in Civil Society and Social Change at USC. Senor Manuel Pastor, welcome to Politics and Right.
Gracias. Siempre un placer estar otra vez contigo.
Sí,
And
senor.
fantastic that you speak not just Spanish, but you got the Armenian name right, Trumpism.
Oh, I am glad I did that.
It's great that you've got the Spanish right, but you also got the Armenian right. Trumpism is the name of the person who endowed the chair that I've got.
Well, good. I'm glad that I did that right. Anyway, Senor Pastor or Professor Pastor, let me tell you that as you know, right now in our space, Trump is claiming that there are a whole lot of Latinos that are starting to migrate to his side of the aisle, his form of thinking. And as much as many of us think it is crazy that somebody as racist, sexist, and xenophobic could possibly garner the support of Latinos. But yesterday, I was speaking to an undocumented worker, and we were talking about both the sentiment of undocumented workers as well as the sentiment of some immigrants coming in over the border in current times, as well as naturalized and what we call inmigrantes con papeles, immigrants with papers. And I tell you what, Trump may be onto something, and I wanted to hear from the expert how true and how widespread it is. But what he told me was that, yes, there are a lot of Latinos gravitating to Trump, and even he, as an undocumented worker, have a feeling for Trump because all those current undocumented workers are coming over here and they are getting their papers and they're getting support and housing and they're getting all these things that I work hard every day for. And they come here and get it all for free. Please tell me about the dynamics.
So there's a lot going on with that, and that is something that the thing you specifically mentioned, that I'll move to the bigger picture, that a lot of folks don't realize. Undocumented people in the country who got here 5 years ago were not able, like the current wave of people that are coming in, to ask for asylum for the most part, and then be able to get some benefits and assistance. And it's interesting to watch these older undocumented folks, 5, 10 years, 15 years in the country, beginning to sound a little bit like right-wing Republicans, resentful of the newcomers who've got all this access, but it's something that's really going on. And what is actually also going on is that there is a shift within the Latino population. You know, it was easy to say at first in 2020 that it was really only Texas Latinos on the borderlands, a lot of people who might be in Border Patrol, Cubans in Florida who were falling susceptible to Trump. But a closer look at that data showed that there were actually more Latinos in other parts of the country that moved toward the Republican Party even in 2020. And the phenomena is continuing to occur. It's not overwhelming, but it's significant enough that it could definitely cost Biden the election in November. So the real question is, why is it going on? A couple of different dynamics. First, there's a big gender divide. If you look at both in the Black population and the Latino population, who's moving over is men, not women. So I think that there's one aspect of the Trump appeal that is very macho. And I don't mean that in a purely Latino way. If you look at the white population, his appeal to men is far outpacing his appeal to women. He's just callous, cruel, and brutal. And that has an appeal to someone who's got a macho idea of what does it mean to be a man. And that's what he's counting on. And that is shifting some Latino men and Black men into those columns. I think the other thing is economic conditions. That is, that there's a perception about the economy having been better under Trump. That perception statistically is incorrect. This is the lowest level of unemployment we've had since the 1960s. It's the lowest level of Black and Latino employment, uh, close to when it's ever been recorded. Um, and we're seeing the inflation rate come down. But I think there's a lot of hurt from the era of the pandemic. And there's also just a lot of sticker shock from the higher prices we're facing, even though the inflation rate has come down. I think the last thing is that there's a lot of Latinos who are actually pretty much law and order. And so, as progressives in the Democratic Party have moved in a direction which probably many of us support of reducing the carceral state, of being more forgiving of people who've engaged in petty crime, that there's a lot of working class Latinos who feel like my car got broken into. Why aren't we arresting the person for doing that? Why is that happening in my community? And Trump is speaking to that in a way that Democrats are not.
And it's ironic because I think you've nailed all of those, and it seems to me like the answer, most of the answer is, believe it or not, well, you know that education, meaning exposing them to the truth, but the other is also catering the message in such a manner that you just spoke about a kid breaking into a car, right? One of the things that progressives believe in is, yes, that kid breaking into a car should be penalized somehow, but it shouldn't make sure that their lives going forward it makes them a pariah for the rest of their lives, right? We know that that has something to do with the with the increase in crime. So whereas Republicans look at things that we are going to try to solve this problem today by the hook or the crook, but don't expand on that solution. There are other ways. We're not expressing that as I see it to these communities. My question to you is
I
how
would, I would say to that what has happened is that progressives are increasingly speaking to the already woke instead of
right.
trying to figure out how to awaken and animate and tap into this population. And I think the thing to realize, Latinos are overwhelmingly working class. There's a thin group of people who are elite in the Latino community or professional middle class. Even people who are really poor in the Latino community generally are working, particularly undocumented folks, because they don't have any access to some of the social safety net that's there. So it's a very working class community. And so speaking to the working class about working class issues, housing, our economy, inflation, how to get a job, how to feel safe in your communities, that's something that, yeah. And by the way, how to speak, and we just have for the last few minutes without using complicated multisyllabic words that you need to have gone to college to understand. Um, that's how we're going to make this kind of an appeal.
You know what? It's amazing. I spoke to the undocumented worker that I was telling you about completely in Spanish, and I had some problems with some of the wordiology exactly because my Spanish is I left Panama at 18, so my Spanish is very simple, not the complicated language that one would get in college with the bigger words. I didn't do a lot of newspaper reading on economics in Panama as an 18-year-old. But so I could relate to him, and one of the things he said after I explained certain things, he said, you have to remember something. You are educated. Most of us are not. And that's what he said to me yesterday. And it kind of put it back, and it even as it reflected what I've said, that we have to go to where the people are and not where we think they should be.
Yes.
And he accepted that, but he also said, but also the message, you have to remember that they're not going to try to study what you're studying. They just want to know what's going to help me now.
Yeah, and I think the point is that the education goes both ways. He is right to look at you and say you are more formally educated than than him. And he educated you yesterday on what
Yes.
people are really feeling. And I think when we have that level of respect for these voters, that's more possible for us to bring them on board. But I think the first thing to do with this, Egberto, is to not look at these voters and say, oh gosh, what is wrong with them? But to really ask the question, what is wrong with us? That we're not communicating sufficiently so that a xenophobic, uh, sexist, uh, dangerous, uh, convicted felon like Donald Trump has such appeal. And that means we need to challenge the sexism that exists in our community. That means that his macho appeal has some appeal. It means that we need to do all that. We need to listen hard to what and understand that this is a real phenomenon.
And you know what? I want to end it with those exact words because that is exactly what we need to do. Dr. Manuel Pastor, distinguished professor, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Love to be with you.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.